What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here at Data Dash, and today is August 30th of 2019. Well, folks, I hope you are having a fantastic day wherever you are. And in today's video, we had the privilege of sitting down with someone who I've not only chatted with in the past, but along with that, someone who I really admire when it comes to trading both cryptocurrencies and other additional markets that I'm interested in. And that is no other than Trader Cobb, or Craig Cobb, as you guys might know him as. So if you haven't heard about him before, I really recommend you stick around. We're going to be talking about all of the mayhem that's been going in crypto markets, breaking down what levels we're looking for, and then also talking about additional markets such as gold markets, and just getting an idea of how he thinks as a trader. And I think it's very important, as we've had as of recent a lot of other individuals coming on this channel, just hearing some different perspectives and letting you guys know some people I really admire in the crypto space. So we're going to get right into it right after our quick sponsor. What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton from Data Dash, and I'm honored to be sitting here with a good friend of mine who I chatted back, I think, in March and April of this year, and that is Craig Cobb, who is one of the main traders in the crypto space that I've been following for a long time. So, Craig, thank you for making some time. I know we're on completely different time zones in the world. You're in one of my favorite countries, Australia, so thanks again for coming on. It's always a pleasure.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure being here. Thanks for having me, and hopefully we can put some good stuff together.
Yeah, I'm interested to get your take on a few things. We kind of talked beforehand about some of the things we want to tackle on this episode. And, we've been talking with a few different YouTubers out there, Alex Sanders as a recent from Nuggets News. And I've been really trying to gain perspective from a lot of the people I respect in the crypto and kind of macroeconomic space. So I definitely want to get your take on a few things. The first thing that I think is most relevant, this is a crypto channel, and what's probably been most kind of dramatic as of recent is the drop in cryptocurrencies. So I'd love to not only maybe get your take on what's going on, but maybe later on we can take a look at some of the charts as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, it's been choppy, hasn't it? I mean, we saw a really good run for the start of the year, and it was very pleasing to see that, of course, some great trends, some great trading opportunities, and a really, really strong run up towards 14,000. But since then, we've got a bit confused.
Mm-hmm.
We've moved back down, back up, back down, and it's getting tighter and tighter. And yesterday was the first day we closed below 10,000 since the 31st of July, I think it was, on the daily. And it's a bit telling. There's some more signs of a few more bears maybe joining the market, but we go through long periods of consolidation like back of 2015, start of 2016. So we just have to wait and see what happens, really. It's been a very slow period for Bitcoin for the last few weeks, apart from the last couple of days,
Yeah, I think honestly it's a very strong consolidation period, and I would honestly be completely fine with the idea of accepting that it might go down to 9,000 or 8,000, because we went on a severe rally in a very short period of time, as you mentioned. I think we were talking back right when the first pop came up in April, when we finally started to see momentum come in, and I was traveling at the time, and the traders that I went to Amsterdam, and they have the stock exchange there. We have a few crypto trading desks, and these guys were like, we had no idea this was coming. Like, it just came out of nowhere. That volume pop really sent signals that the bottom was finally in. So I think it's going to be a really interesting thing as to whether or not we can build support around this range, hold around the 10,000 region, and then possibly continue this kind of momentum going into the next few months with all the institutional entries possibly coming up.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, it's I was watching that on the weekly chart, and when we go to the chart, I'll show you what I was talking about. It was for me, it was a super important level on the weekly chart. If we broke up through, I can't remember what the exact number was, but it was when we had the higher low and then a higher high.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, right, good. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what I've got. It was on a weekly chart, so it had taken quite a while to happen. And then we just off to the races we went. We did 346% from the low to the high in a couple of months. Like, it was a proper Bitcoin run. What I'm finding interesting now and what I was finding interesting during that run was, I was fortunate. I had a few different trades on Bitcoin, so different risk profiles. I did really well out of that run. But what I found really interesting was a lot of people, when I say, oh, we need a pullback, I want to see Bitcoin pull back to, say 9,000 as the number or whatever it was. And people get upset about that. And it's like, well, you got to understand that just like an athlete needs to breathe when they're sprinting, so too does a market. It can't just keep going in a straight line. It needs to pull back. It needs to have that profit taking. It needs to fill the coffers again and get ready for that next move. So a pullback is super healthy. We haven't seen a pullback on the monthly chart yet from the like a 4 or 5 month run. to the upside. So look, I could see us going to 7,000 even. We could do that. It's not unheard of. It wouldn't be unnatural, and I would see it as being a very positive thing for the market.
And to build on that point, Craig, it's not only that things don't move in a straight line, but they also usually don't keep in a parabolic line forever. And that's what we were doing. I think people, I mean, again, if you look back at Bitcoin's history, and we really have to consider that we're talking about a much larger market scale, to see how fast this recovery came in the market was a huge blessing for a lot of people who have been holding and waiting. And I think, honestly, I think we got a little too greedy in our expectations. It still has way outperformed gold, equities, any kind of asset class that we could think of or dream of right now. And I definitely want to spend some time, to talk about, what are your expectations for crypto going over, say, the next 6 to 12 months? I know it's hard to look that far ahead, but when do you see that we're going to start eventually getting back to the all-time highs? Do you see that being a possibility by the end of 2019 or more towards the earlier mid part of 2020? I'd love to get your kind of thoughts on the kind of longer term picture.
Yeah, mate. I mean, look, anything's possible. This is crypto. This is Bitcoin. This is we've done 346% already this year. I mean, that's insane movement. That's the reason that I've, in my 13-year trading career, even before when we were talking pre-show, I'm like, what's the code again for 10-year notes? Like, I've forgotten what the code is. I haven't traded them for like a couple of years because, this market, I've never traded a market like it. And I'm a full-time trader. I have been for the last nearly a decade now. It's pretty much all I know. So for me, crypto is such an epic market because it's got so just the volatility is just insane. But where can it go? Well, man, it could easily be above all-time highs by the end of the year. I mean, this market it just ramps when it goes, and it can be based around really nothing. Why did we see that really big pump that pushed us through 4,000 and beyond up to 5,000-6,000? I don't know. I don't care either. I'm a trader. I follow a checklist-based trading strategy. So there's nothing in my checklist that says think. It's about acting on the momentum that I get. But just based on prior history of this wonderful market, it could certainly do it. And there are a couple of levels that I'm very cautious or very aware of on the weekly charts at the moment, and also on the monthly charts. But look, I'm like, what are we in now? The nearly the ninth month of the year. It's gone past really, really quick. And although some parts have certainly felt like the market has been had a lot of breath pushed back into it, it also has felt like a relatively ho-hum type of a year. Do you feel the same at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, things feel like quite slow. The reason, well, this is with most markets from what I get. I think it's very similar to the reaccumulation period of Bitcoin when it was going back up to 1100. You see that the price comes back up, but you don't see the retail wave. And you only get that retail wave. Even some people who know about crypto, maybe invested in the past, they will only come back when price is raging, as it has historically. Yeah. And the one thing I will say in the fundamental sense that's gotten me excited about this space that I think provides the reason for this valuation increase. I'm not saying it's the reason why it's gone up, but to justify it to some degree is what I'm seeing in the DeFi movement. A lot of the kind of emerging financial movements in the crypto space where we're finally kind of getting an understanding of what blockchain and cryptocurrency is really going to be used for. So that's what I'm really excited about. And I think that's going to carry a lot of users and fundamental value to the space in the long term. But I'm interested, you're mentioning those weekly levels. If you want to pull up the chart, Craig, I know that's your stuff, man. So I would love to see that.
Let me do that now. Alrighty. Let me throw up. I'm going to look at the XBT contract. By the way, can you see this all fine?
Yeah, it's looking great. Awesome.
All right, cool. So the XBT, this is a BitMEX contract, the one I like to trade. So for me, just a very quick run through. I strip a lot back on my charts. I don't use diagonal or sloping trend lines at all. I only use horizontals. I use a 10-period moving average and a 20-period moving average. The 10 is the white line. The 20 is the pink line here, and I use the MACD. Now, I look to have pullbacks into what I call the cradle zone, which is into this region here, and that's just an equilibrium point. So if you hear me talking about that, because it just sort of comes out naturally, that's what I'm talking about. It's in and around this 10 and 20-period moving average. Now, for me, the last couple of days have been interesting for one simple reason. Lower high here on this candle, and then a lower low as it broke down through this level. Now, technically, we're in a daily downtrend, all right? But the level that's really got me, if I throw it up on the weekly, is here. 9,077. That is the low of this pullback. Now, the interesting thing about that is if we break down through that level, we'll have a lower high and a lower low on the weekly. Then if I go out to the monthly, this is where I sort of get that opinion or that view of 7,000 is not out of the question. You look at 7,000 just here. It pulls back into that cradle zone. And we've seen this happen time and time again. And I'll show this to you, a little bit of research that I did a little while back. During the
Oh, wow.
2017 run, which is the most comparable bull market, the most recent comparable bull market that we've got to work with, right? Each time we pulled back into this cradle zone, which is where I trade from that equilibrium point, as I was saying before. The average pullback is 35.5%, I think it is.
Mm.
But and this is why I'm looking for like wad pullbacks, and I like pullbacks. The average move over all those was 270% to the upside. So that's why I really like pullbacks. What we've got at the moment is a pullback in order. Now, if we talk about 35% being that equilibrium, we didn't quite get there, but it's an average, remember? So very, very close. If we break down through here, well, we could very easily go on and have some form of like a 40% or more move lower. We could even go as far, like I said, as to 7,000, which would only be a 50% retracement from those highs. And I say only because let's not forget what market we are looking at right now. So this is the key level for me, and the monthly pullback to around 7,000. Although I'm not suggesting I believe it's going to happen, if we do break that level, I do see that as being an option and one that wouldn't panic me.
Yeah, and Craig, as you were mentioning on the chart there, I just noticed on that kind of cradle zone on the weekly, it seems as if Bitcoin's in that right now. Where at the moment we've had our around 35% correction at that level at 9,100 or around 9,000, and you're already in the cradle zone. So that would be interesting to see if history plays out there. I know there's a really good use, and I like your use of very simple indicators of horizontal support and resistance, the use of EMAs in this case from 10 to 20, and not to mention the MACD as well, which is a really good cross. So you can see that you have the cross and the MACD there. And interestingly enough, some people were saying, I think the cross on the MACD weekly is like a warning sign. But if you look historically, I think on the chart, I didn't get to notice it when you're looking at it. It's like, oh no, I guess it wasn't on the weekly. I think it was on the daily or something. I saw on crypto Twitter, they were using it as a bearish thing because in most markets it is. But actually, every time it picked the bottom on the way up on the last rally. So I thought that was pretty ironic.
Well, the way that I use, I mean, from my point of view, I'm looking for, so MACD is an indicator for me to know when to stay out of a market. And I know that the traditional way that a lot of people use RSI. I'm not quite sure why it's so popular in crypto, but it does seem to be. I used to have the MACD and the RSI. I've worked with some amazing traders all over the world. I've not gone to university or anything like that. I'm a trader that's learned from mentorships, really. And the more that I saw of the more successful long-term traders, the less they had in their charts. So I took away the RSI. And the simple reason I did was because the MACD tells me everything I need to know for the way that I trade. Now, I trade a very simple style, pullbacks and breakouts. 3 trading strategies. That's it. Built my whole career on that. And this cradles, and you can see it in the way down. Look, it pulls back into that region. Now, I'm not suggesting there's always a trade when it pulls back in, but it's definitely an equilibrium point. And that's why, and when I talked about this week when we broke up and it was kind of like out of nowhere, it was definitely out of nowhere, but it was building in my eyes because that's why I had this level in here. Right? Higher low here. If we were to break up through this point, we'd have a higher high. And it's just simple trend. Now, what we're seeing up here, and I hope we don't see this in red, what we're seeing up here is exactly the same sort of pattern. Some people might call this a double bottom. The fact of the matter is it's just a trend reversal up here. And if we do break down through here, look, as much as, I can make money whether the market goes up or down. It doesn't really affect me. I much prefer it to go up. A, my investments go better. B, it's much easier for business. C, everyone's happy. And D, there's not as many trolls being really rude to us. So, I'd much prefer to see the market go up so everybody does well. But I'm equipped.
Yeah.
I know how to trade short, and I can make just as much money when the market falls as what I can when the market goes up.
One thing that I think you might have sort of been pointing out there with that technical formation, Craig, in that case is on the weekly. I think, this is something I always try to press to people is they're usually looking like you are right now at the longer term trends. And I'll point out here with my mouse, notice how here at the bottom, guys, you see this continuation of green candles. There's, I guess, one exception at the bottom in February where it was red, but the rest of them were week upon week of slow, steady green price action that eventually led to the breakout in the early part of April. So what I always try to drill to people, Craig, and I'm curious to see if you agree with this, it's so important to focus on the longer term time frames. And again, as you've done here, look at these huge levels of support and resistance that, again, don't overcomplicate it, and will leave you probably checking the charts every once in a while, not stressing about it too much because you already have your game plan set within those frameworks.
That's it. A lot of people don't go to the weekly chart in crypto.
They don't.
I don't understand why. I mean, look, I guess there's got to be a certain level of maybe inexperience. I understand that it's a fast-paced market, so maybe they don't think they need to. Maybe they're just new traders, so they've not had that need to look further. For whatever the reason it may be, though, you've got to understand what's going on. I mean, the normal chart pattern that I have, so the normal timeframes I have is the daily and the 4 hour, because what it does is a multiple of 6 up to the daily of 4, and it also gives me on the 4 hour a really nice sort of mid-term time frame. So you can see here on the 4 hour, lower high, lower low. I'm just waiting for a pullback. Give me a pullback into the cradle zone. Let me have a trade, and I'll take that. And if I know what it looks like on the 4 hour, then I know what roughly it's going to be looking like on the 2, and then the 8, and so on and so forth. So, it's good to know your lower time frames depending on when you're looking to take the trade, but without knowing at least the daily and then working your way to the weekly, you're going to miss out on some key support and resistance levels that if you're looking at, say, a 1 hour chart, well, you're not going to see it because you're too focused inside of that small time frame. You zoom out, all of a sudden, there's our support down here. Oh, I see that now. I now know where that is. Is that going to get in the way of my first target, or is it still fine? It's knowing your environment that's super, super important when you're trading. And I think far too few people focus on the low time frames, when the higher time frames are certainly going to maybe help you more than you think.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be definitely taking a look more through the cradle zone that you've built. I think this is a really interesting combination of the EMAs, and I couldn't agree more with you that in that sense of taking a step back and seeing just how easy it is to find those significant support and resistant levels when you look at larger time frames. So now we've still got the chart up here, Craig. I guess a final question for crypto markets, and then I do want to get your opinion on a few other spaces and markets that we watch here on the channel. Kind of general target. What is your most probable target right now? I know you mentioned a few levels. Do you think we'll be able to hold at this $9,100 level? We're going to test for what might look like a triple bottom here. Obviously, we set our first low here sometime in July 15th, and then I think towards the end of July, and it might be going for the triple bottom. Do you think that we're going to get that?
Look, it's you said the word think. There's I got a piece of paper.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
It says trade what you see, not what you think. So for me, it's all about reading what the price has to tell me. So the skill set that I've got is I look at this chart and it's like it's like it's Spanish and I'm fluent. I know how to read this chart. So although we are starting to see some tipping to the bearish side, i.e. lower high here, now a new low here, that is definitely much more bearish than bullish. What we do have to be cognizant of the fact is we've still got this 9,100 level, as you quite rightly said. This was the old 2019 high until, of course, we broke it, and it has acted as support not once but twice in recent times. So for me, that's a king level. We could come down to there, we could find support, we could bounce, and away we go. And we're at 14,000 within a couple of weeks. That's an option. The other thing is we can come down, hit 9,100, tank, and head towards 7,000. Until I know more about this level, I wouldn't be willing to sort of say anything more than, we are in a consolidation period. We do have these lower highs that continue to come in. So, of course, that's more oppression for buyers. It's much more pressure, much more, a winning battle in the tug of war of buyers and sellers towards the seller side. This is the key level for me, this 9,100. I'm really, look, if we're going to break it, I want to see it consolidate in there so I can get a short trade. Litecoin tried, if you note this $74 level through here. Good support, a little bit messy through here, but there was still a bit of support there. And look at how we hung in there. We clung to this level until we caught back up into the cradle. The pressure built and we broke. The issue I had here was that I just couldn't find a strong enough level that was really perfect horizontal with no sort of full-on breaks through it to get a trade on, which I've been watching that for quite some time. All the people that I work with will attest to that. Unfortunately, you don't always get what you want. But that if we could see Bitcoin do something similar to what Litecoin did, but down around those lows, then it might just give me a ripper spot for a short, and that short probably have a maximum target of about 7,000 if we do break that level.
Yeah, again, I like how you're focusing with the 7,000 target. You're looking at those previous support levels. And I appreciate you calling me out on that because that's a very good point. Like you need to, again, go with this idea. I've always talked about people, I call it basically when I'm, you talked about your cradle and everything. I kind of talk about something being called the twilight zone. It's basically like, there is many situations where a market is either in a no trend scenario or it can go both ways through wedges, through things that sort when you're looking at key levels of support and resistance. So I think it's very important that you again keep that mindset of always waiting until having finality. And then also sometimes if there's not enough signs, not making a move. There's not always a trade that needs to be done. So I think that's a great mindset to have overall. And
well, the other thing on my wall here says if it's not clear, it's not there. So if you're ever questioning yourself, stop. Just don't do it. If it doesn't
exactly.
stand out and tell you, like, because I got a checklist to increase my probability and to keep me disciplined. Like, it sounds weird. I really don't need to think. I don't get paid to think. I get paid to act. I know these strategies work. I've been employing them for over 10 years, and if I like made the opportunity cost of me thinking. I'll show you one. I am human. I make mistakes. I make them frequently. Here's a perfect example. Pullback on Ethereum against the dollar, straight back into the cradle zone. Perfect bearish candle, ticks the boxes as far as the strategy goes. Whooshka. Did I take that? No, because I had a thought. Bitcoin was looking a lot more bullish at that stage, and I thought, well, how am I going to do this? And I've been working on being better at that because it is a mistake that I have made twice now this year. And I don't like to make mistakes, but it's okay. We can learn from those. But you can see, the only reason I'm not in the money here is because I didn't raise that order. Other people, other members did. I didn't.
So in that case, you were concerned that Bitcoin might carry Ethereum upward through the cradle zone in that case, but everything was flashing on the Ethereum chart that you should go short.
I thought, and that was my downfall. If I didn't think, I'd just raise the order and I'd be in the money.
I like that, Craig. That was a good little story there. I appreciate you sharing it, and again, sharing both your wins and also your losses. We do the same thing here on the channel. It's good to learn from those lessons, and especially it usually does come when there's the human error that steps in outside of the strategy. So I'm curious as well, Craig. Let's see. Now that we got the chart up here, I would love to get your take on gold. I mean, like obviously precious metals is another focus for us a lot in the space, but I mean the tear has been crazy. In our newsletter, we wrote about basically El Dorado is one of our stock picks for the last month. And even though it had already been on a crazy rally, I mean, it's just the gold miners and gold in general has just been killing it.
Yeah, they sure have. It's made me a little bit annoyed that I sold my gold stocks in Australia here a few years back, but I put it into Bitcoin, so
there you go.
All right. Look, as far as it goes, I'm a trend trader. I'm a trend follower. I trade trends up or down. Gold is in a stellar uptrend right now. A little bit of divergence up here. So this is how I use divergence. You'll note how price, here's a high, here's a new higher high, yeah? The MACD has not followed price in that sense. So if I got a market that does that, it doesn't mean that it's going to fall. Not at all. It just means that there's a little bit less momentum there, and I'm not willing to get into that market. It's a reason to stay out for me. But if I go a bit lower, let's have a look at the 8 hour here. It's going to look very similar to the daily, of course, because there is an open and a close. Actually, this is the gold future, so it should be fine. You can see here, it is, again, quite divergent up here. As far as the weekly goes, though, I mean, look at that. We could really use a pullback on gold. It's not often that you see... I mean, this looks like a crypto market, right? It's not often.
It looks like an altcoin.
It really does, and it's not often that you see that in traditional markets. I mean, you consider what that move is. I told you this year, Bitcoin has moved 100 or 300 and something percent. I mean, let's look at gold throughout the same period. Let's just call this the low. Look at the same period of time, 34%. I mean, it's not. It's like comparing apples and crocodiles.
Yeah, we're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar market here, and I mean to see a 34% move like that, I think it speaks to a lot of the global fears with the negative yielding bonds, what's going on across not equity markets in the U.S. but really broader global equities right now. This general slowdown and kind of recession signs that are starting to flash.
Yep. It's everywhere. It's on the front page. It's in the conversations in coffee shops. People are talking about this. This is not something that's sort of just bubbling away in the background. The time for bubbling is over. It's those bubbles are starting to come to the surface and starting to pop at the moment, and we're seeing more erratic responses. Certainly, the leader of your country has come out and done certain things that also makes it shaky, a bit scary. Unsettling the circumstances for which markets flourish or die. Any uncertainty in a market is seen as a very, very bad thing. Markets don't like uncertainty. When markets get uncertainty, you get gold runs like this because, you know what? Gold is one of the go-tos for safety. I know that there's a lot of gold people out there that have listened to certain commentators for which remain nameless. But effectively, I see Bitcoin as a potential gold as well, how it fits in a in turmoil is going to be very, very interesting. I'm not. I don't have a theory on will money flood into Bitcoin when the markets fall. I really, really, really don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see. But for the time being, gold looking very strong with that daily divergence. We might be on the verge of seeing a bit of a pullback here, which would be very, very healthy indeed.
So,
Again, back into the
so Craig, you're
this trade.
saying that you won't see a shift into crypto markets from all the money that came into gold originally.
No, I'm saying I'm not sure what will happen. I'm interested to see, and that will then be the litmus test for the future because we don't have like Bitcoin has been around, believe it or not, as long as this bull market has run. That's 10 years. That is insane. We
It is
usually
pretty
just
incredible. Yeah.
sorry.
No, I was, so it is pretty incredible and stuff. I think we don't talk about the time scale that Bitcoin has been around. I mean, it's incredible to think that this really, as really not even just being around for a while, but the fact that crypto has really been only a relatively liquid market since 2013, 2014, where there is some kind of active trading. There's a few different exchanges, and even your definition of liquid might, vary in that case. What do you determine as liquid? How much liquidity do you need? So, yeah, I think 100% on that. I was giving crap earlier because you're mentioning some gold bugs who have quite a negative view on crypto. I was thinking about Peter Schiff, but
Yep, that was the man that would remain nameless. I interviewed him a while back, and it was quite funny actually. I know his career. It's about buying gold and being right in gold. Even a broken clock's right twice a year, right? Sorry, twice a day. And he was trying to explain to me why Bitcoin would work. I'm like, but what you just explained, we can do. Oh yeah, but you can't do this. Well, when have you gone to the mechanic and given him a block of gold and asked you to, I said, oh, can you just chip a little bit of that off and that's how I'll pay? Doesn't work that way. Now, equally, when have you gone to the mechanic and paid for your car in Bitcoin? But you can buy stuff with Bitcoin. It's actually a measure of trade. He just couldn't get his head around it. And of course, his ego is exploding now because guess what? Gold is going right. And for the last 5 years, he's been saying buy gold. Well, like I say, broken clock was right twice a day. And he's bathing in glory right now.
Yeah, well, I like the analogy stuff. I think he's a good guy and stuff. And like at the same time, I like people, for example, like Mike Maloney and stuff. I've had both him and Schiff on the channel, and I think they're both great guys and stuff. Really like Mike's approach to understanding crypto is this. I think it's really the fifth evolution of money in this case, where you've got, for example, the properties of store of value, and there is a real good chance that Bitcoin could serve as a lot of other things. It could serve as a currency used possibly in the future if it does reach a form of stability in the future, and then along with that, not to mention either obviously a higher throughput in this case through scalability, but also being able to be used as a settlement layer for all types of different financial transactions. There's people who are working on projects right now to use Bitcoin for contracts for difference, and I guess you kind of understand that in the trading world and everything. But I think it's a very fascinating use case to be able to hedge yourself in any way, shape, or form on Bitcoin, with Bitcoin being the underlying settlement or kind of the store of value in that case. So that's a really interesting project that's going on now. But I thought you might find that interesting.
I just didn't know what I didn't get, and he was nice to speak to and everything. What I didn't understand is, I mean, effectively, if he's saying buy gold, he's not saying buy gold because he wants to make earrings out of it and keep gold long term for jewelry making purposes, right? He's speculating, right? He's in a speculating asset class. He wants gold because he wants gold to go up. He believes gold will go up, and gold is going up. But as a speculator, how can you ignore something as powerful as Bitcoin based on its history? I mean, there's 10 years of history there now, and there's a good 4 years of actual decent enough volume for a trader to be involved, right? Or a speculator to be involved. And, it was easy enough to be involved. And obviously it's getting easier and easier. How can you ignore that sort of movement if you're a speculator? I just don't understand. Like when I found this market, well, when it was introduced to me again, because I was introduced to it in 2013 and sort of kicked it to the curb because I was like, well, I can't trade it. There's not enough information there for me to use a chance to buy and sell. But when I came back to it in 2017, midway through then, I was open to it. I didn't shut it out. I was like, okay, well, it's a market. It's volatile.
Yeah.
No, cool. And I looked and went, holy crap, these strategies that I've been employing and everything else is working brilliantly here. But it's that lack of openness to learn something new that I found very frustrating. No desire whatsoever to hear it from the other side. And I kind of don't like that in people. You got to sort of have a listen. You don't have to agree, but at least sort of you've got to draw parallels in places where they are just bleedingly obvious.
To speak on that, Craig, I'll tell anyone out there watching, I think this is kind of a good note to end on in this case. As you're building, Craig, in this case, as a point, to become a trader, you do not want to, again, let any kind of form of bias get in the way. If you have conversations with people and you can't even for 5 to 10 minutes hear another point of view or hear another perspective on something, a different viewpoint, it's one of the worst signs that you should never trade. I can tell you that the biggest thing that would get in my way was my own ego. I would say in this case, like when I would trade, I don't mean to use the term ego, it's a very harsh term, but it's the idea that it's like, oh, I know for certain. You can talk about some of the biggest names, Ray Dalio, a lot of the huge managers of capital in the world who say the same thing. Their biggest plunders were when they let themselves get too confident. And some of the best conversations I've had, and I think you'd agree with this, Craig, is just letting someone else talk, give their position, even if they completely disagree with you. I think it's one of the best and most kind of intellectually invigorating things when I'm like, oh my God, that just changed my perspective.
Yep. When you listen to people, you learn a lot more. And we're super lucky, man. Like for us to be able to interview the people that we do, like on my podcast, and at least on your show and everything. I mean, God, what an education by being able to speak with the people that are effectively birthing this industry. I mean, look, I'm just a trader. I know what I do. I know what I don't do. I'm very good at what I do. I'm terrible at everything else. But for me, it's really nice to be able to ask questions. And like on that podcast, I talk more to the business of the asset. So if someone comes to me and they've got a token or whatever it is, I want to talk to them about when are you getting the revenue? And sometimes they're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, when are you getting your revenue? Because why would I invest in something when there's no plan for revenue? Like, how long till you get to revenue? What is the plan for revenue? And a lot of people are still saying, but these people don't get on the show. They're still sort of thinking that everyone's just going to go get involved because of the hype of 2017. It's like, you've got to deliver here, Charlie Barter, because no one's doing it and everyone's sinking. And how are you going to be different? The market is much more mature now. And I think that's a really, really good thing for everybody in the space.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of token models that build off this really, this really beautiful idea that we, for example, would all come together and we build these awesome decentralized communities. And the problem that I see is that the reason it festered so well is because the 1% of people who are in crypto are those kind of individuals where we are very creative minded, we're very social, we're very outgoing and very against the system. We love fighting against censorship, things of that sort, the revolutionary properties of Bitcoin. But 99% of the world, a lot of people, I would say maybe, I wouldn't say 99%, that's an overassumption, but a lot of people out there aren't like that and they don't need it for those reasons. So you need to build cryptocurrencies or any kind of emerging technology or your own unique token to be something that is going to provide some form of value in the world that's probably not something that we see as valuable or might not need. So I completely agree with you. I see a lot of failed token models that don't focus on how they're actually going to integrate with traditional systems, how do they merge into the current world of business. But Craig, as always, man, it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, I'd love to do this again in the future sometime. Again, it was great coming on your channel last time, and I think there's a lot of interesting things going on right now. But I'm glad to see precious metals doing well, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, even though we've gone through a bit of a correction consolidation, we are still definitely
we were at the start of the year.
Yes, that is something. Let's cheers to that in that case. Yeah, so I think it's good to see where we are right now, and hopefully next time we talk, we'll be approaching back towards all the all-time highs, and hopefully be setting up for the next major macro cycle for cryptocurrencies.
Yeah. Hope so, mate. We got to just sit there, do what we got to do for the short term. Build starts going short. That's what I'll be looking to do if we can break that 9,000 level. We'll see how we go.
Awesome, man. I can't wait to see how it turns out and stuff. We'll see what level it goes to in support, and hopefully we'll be trending up from there.
Sounds good, mate. Appreciate the time, and thanks everyone out there. Appreciate it.
Cheers.